And you can use a pest analysis format. You know, if you need to get more ideas about what are the different things that you could deal with or face, then, what happened? Then you could, you know, look at a pest analysis and get some ideas. And say, oh yeah, I didn't really research that yet, so I should find out. Why can't I move this over? Oh my God, what is this thing? All right, so I'll start from I reckon I'll highlight the book after I go through this list. Excuse me. Actually, let me start with page 116. 116 actually has, it says political risks at the bottom of page 116. And I think this should be the first thing. There are three main things that you have to concern with the risk. Is ownership risk. So are you allowed to own the business? Can it be taken over? Will the law protect you? And the drama of this answer in the book is not really what we're talking about. We're talking about your legal protection. So if you have to have partners in another country and you can only have ownership of 49%, so you cannot have like the actual control of the business, is that something that you want to have happen? You know, is that the kind of ownership risk that you want to have? For example, in Thailand, I know that they have a way of, you know, you get like multiple partners. So even though you are only allowed to have 49% of a company, you can get like 5 different partners and give them 10 or 11%, and at least 1 or 2 of them that you trust, right, that you have on your side. And that way you can protect yourself and have the key decision making of the company still. So that's ownership risk. Then you have operations risk. Operations is once you're already invested and then you are in a position where you cannot operate for some reason. They change the laws of employment. They change the laws and create some other barriers, some new competition laws or marketing laws or environmental laws that add cost to you. That's a risk, but you know that. You know that when you go into the country that there's a legal system that's there, and they're either gonna, you know, this is something you should check when you do your research. Do they protect is foreign business protected? There's an index of you know, vast or maybe least risk international business or country. I don't know, I'm just guessing keywords here. Oh no, wait, Bing. Oh, I have to type it again. It got me again. God damn Bing. So, we all know, you know, there's some countries that are, you know, like Iraq. You're not going to go into that without being aware that there are risks of doing business in that country because they've been at war for a long time. What am I trying to find out? Political risk? So, even better, you get a political risk map. It's a beautiful map of the world. And this political risk, where are you going to open a business? click on something. So let's see, you have your, what's their risk label? Stable, of course, all the Western countries, so stable. Always supporting the Western countries. And Vietnam is yellow gold. We're like 60 to 69. We're pretty stable compared to what they would have us believe. You can see Iraq here is completely unstable. Afghanistan, this whole part of the world has been made unstable to prevent China from having trade from the U.S. Pretty smart. Myanmar, unstable. Cambodia, really unstable. Seems like they've been pretty stable government-wise. So you can do research on the political risk of these countries. Vietnam, high short-term political risk is 82. A stable political system, blah, blah, blah. Something about South China Seas, blah, 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 blah. But, so that's not really super helpful. And I can't get out of this. Once I pick a country, I'm stuck. It's funny. And then the third kind is, of course, economic risk, but political economics, which means government policy and those things like that could affect exchange rates. For example, do interest rates, like I said, interest rates don't directly affect you, so I wouldn't count them in this project, but they would affect the economy, right? Low interest rates are supposed to inspire people to borrow money and to heat the economy up, and high interest rates are supposed to pull the economy back down. So there's some element of interest rates that's sort of, effective to business, but when you're going to another country and you're going to expand, that's going to take, the effects of those changes in interest rates are going to take, a long period of time. You're not really worried about it. You're not actually borrowing money there, so it doesn't really matter to you. Okay, so let's look at this list here, and I'll just mention things that seem relevant. Bureaucracy. Yeah, bureaucracy means like how to deal with all the chaos of the red tape of trying to get your business licenses, knowing who is responsible for what kind of, knowing which office to go to in order to solve problems. Do I have to hire some outside agency to deal with that, or can I do it myself? So there's a lot of questions about how to manage the system, and there's bribes in there too. Corruption. Corruption means like what kind of corruption level? I can't deal with this anymore. What is this advertising thing? It's killing me. Help me here. I just want to move the list. All right. I reached my limit with this. Again, I recognize these videos are not going to make money for myself, so I don't care. So, now we can read them without advertisements jumping in. Corruption level, again, there's different kinds of bribery. There's a kind of bribery where you just pay to tax to everyone to do what you need to do. And then there's a kind of corruption where you're entering the market and the other competitors in the market can use the government against you to keep you out of the market or to sabotage you. Freedom of the press, yeah, we don't care about that. We're not going to make any scandals. Tariffs means taxes, but most countries have a free trade agreement with Vietnam. Education law, not really, doesn't affect you. Antitrust would affect you if you were a monopoly. But most coffee companies are not monopolies, so we don't have to worry about that. Employment law, of course, we have to worry about regulations, minimum wage. safety of workers? What's the difficulty of hiring them and firing them? And what kind of rights and benefits and leave and all of those things that they're entitled to? I mean, look at how complicated Australia is. Opening a business in Australia means it's no joke to deal with employment law. Of course, discrimination law might come into play, but not too much. Data protection, privacy. Privacy, is that something that you need to worry about? Probably not. Environmental, yes. Have to worry about that a bit. Health and safety, yes. Competition regulation is the same as antitrust, which means that the markets are regulated to be more competitive. Taxes, you know what? I don't really think that taxes are such a great big deal, because when you're dealing with taxes, everybody's dealing with the same taxes. So it's not an advantage or disadvantage. Everybody pays taxes for the retirement or the superannuation of employees. Everybody pays taxes for GST. So it's not, you know, if you go to a new market, it's not like you say, oh, well, it's more expensive for us to operate in Singapore because higher taxes. Not really, because the prices you charge include the tax, and you make more money and you pay more taxes, but it's not, you're only going to compare the competition in the market where you're in and look for differences between the countries where it's relevant to how the difference between how you do business differently in that country. And if everybody in the country, most countries are just going to have taxes, it's not a big difference between them. Government stability, of course, the stability of the government affects you only in a couple ways. One, if the government is so unstable it might crash, which is pretty rare. Then of course that would be something to worry about. But if the government is changing from Trump to Biden, and so everything that Trump said or all of his policies are now changed because there's a different party in power, and then every time each party takes power, they don't enforce or they change the laws, that could be a problem. Unions, not for you, you're a pretty small company. Import restrictions might be a problem. IP definitely could be a problem depending on what you're trying to do. And that again comes down to what kind of legal protection you have. Consumer protections, so you have to worry about, you know, making sure that customers don't, there was a lawsuit against McDonald's before where this customer burnt themselves on the coffee because their coffee was too hot and they had burns in their mouth. But you're not going to do that, right? Laws, e-commerce laws, what are the rights you have on e-commerce? And also advertising, of course. You know, there's some laws about marketing. Maybe people in some countries think coffee is, like me, they think coffee is a very healthy thing. In some countries they regulate, they don't want children to be witnessing that or thinking that it's okay to drink coffee. Environment, again. So those are the main political factors. I'm just going to look at the book. There are a couple of elements in the book. It says, let's see, page 116. They're asking very general questions that are bigger for bigger businesses. How stable is the government? Is a democracy or dictatorship? That doesn't really matter because the laws are what really matters. And that's what the third one is. How would the rules for business change if Joe Biden takes over for Donald Trump? How involved is the government in the business sector? You know, are they knocking on your door every day? Number 5 or number 6 is the most important one. Is there a well-established legal system to enforce the rules? Now, I would say to anybody who would come to Vietnam is to recognize that it's really, really, like your biggest cost when you come and try to do business here is probably to rent a place and not have problems. Because if you rent a place here and you do well, oftentimes the terms will change, right? There'll be a terms, you know, oh, you're doing well, I'm going to raise rent. So what people have done now is to create these contracts where the business pays like 5 years in advance. So that's a super huge upfront cost, but it is legal and it's protected, and if they take the money and the contract says that this is how much you're going to pay and there's not going to be any increase in your rent, and some people want to take the money today instead of trying to raise the rent tomorrow, then you've done a great job at holding on to it. But you have to, of course, know that this is going to be a successful location. There are some risks involved. If you put 5 years down, you can have Corona come, and then that is going to wipe out all that good work you did on finding that location. And now, in Saigon, a lot of people are giving up. You know, they tried so many times to think, okay, I should hold on to this space and not break the contract, but now it's getting so bad that that people are not going to risk as much to pay as many years in advance the rent, so they can keep the rent. So that's going to be a business problem in the future in Vietnam. It's like, how do you rent a place? If you rent a place and then the economy picks up again, and then the landlord comes to you and tries to raise the rent and cut your profits, you might feel that it's too expensive to continue. But if you put a long-term contract and pay for it in advance, then something like the pandemic can crush you, and you already paid the money for that rent, and you can't get it back. So it's pretty rough. That's an example of a consideration. So that's a political consideration. That's real life. If you come to Vietnam, you have to really be careful about how you rent spaces for coffee shops, right? That kind of thing, and the legal protection for that, right? So rental prices would be something that would be economic, and legal protection for renters would be something that would be political. So those are both interesting topics. I think what I'm going to do, and if you made it to the end of this video, you might be celebrating, is I'm going to push the final turn-in date to Monday at the beginning of week 5. It's a long time to do this project, but I think since I'm going to finish, since mostly I will finish up to the economic factors before the weekend, so it'll give you a weekend to still play with the ideas that you're researching. And really, there's nothing else for us to do in terms of our preparation and homework, so I should be nice. So we can technically say at this point that you have to send me your final, let me check the calendar. You have to send me your final day to do this task. Will be the 18th. Is that right? So much time. 18th. No, 19th is a Monday. Monday the 19th. You have to get them here. You have to deliver them to me. You have to send them on the Grab. You have to find a way to get them to school. There'll be a box here waiting for you. So you just got 3 extra days. You should love me. You should cheer online. You should salute me. The other parts of this chapter, relationship between governments. I mean, there's positive and negative. There's free trade agreements between countries. There's a lot of countries that have sanctions, but Vietnam is very, very, we're very friendly and everyone loves us. So most of that is not necessarily relevant, I don't think, for the rest of your task. So I'm going to stop there for today. And if I find another good handout, I will add it into the classroom. Economic freedom map. Economic freedom. What does that mean in the pandemic? How political factors affect Nike. Studies show that Nike has earned high profits from its growth-oriented policies, maintain low interest. Yeah, well, maybe I'll find a good pest analysis of something that I could share, like a full pest analysis with you. Again, somebody asked me about the length of the project. I think if it's more than 10 pages, it's too long. This is not a whole business plan kind of thing, you know, it's not that huge. It's a report for a CEO. So the CEO is going to want to feel like they're getting a summary of a report, a summary of the factors that they should care about, and just see that you understand that market. It's not something that we need to, I do want to see resources at the end, but it's not something that you need to, they're not going to read it. Oh, the CEO is not going to read 25 pages. They're just going to read 10. So, thanks guys. Happy Wednesday. So, today, a little bit about leadership traits, the leadership and management roundup, and then I think I'll get into a few of the economic factors from the book. So, real quick, let's enjoy John Cotter for a second, telling us the difference between leading and managing. I think actually he does a good job here. It's pretty short.
Okay, here's the tip, and then I'm going to back up and tell you why I think it's important. The tip: be absolutely crystal clear in your own mind about the difference between leadership and management, and make sure the people around you are also crystal clear about that difference. Now, let me back up. Management is fundamentally a set of processes, the most core of which are planning, budgeting, organizing, staffing, controlling, and problem solving. And what management does is to take a system, an organization of people and technology, and make it function the way it was designed to function, producing a good or a service on time, on budget, absolutely the way it was designed to work. What leadership is it's a set of processes involving creating a vision of the future and a strategy for getting there, for communicating that out to people in a way that gets them to buy into it, and then creating an environment that motivates those people, that inspires those people to want to make that vision a reality. And what leadership does is it creates, in a sense, the systems that managers manage, or it takes them and it changes them in some fundamental ways to adapt to changes outside an organization, to grab opportunities, to duck hazards, to raise standards. Both are obviously very important, but if you don't get it clear what each is, you run into these problems. Here's the most typical. All of a sudden, something happens in a company's environment. Basically, the most common is the speed of change goes up. And somebody notices this, and it starts affecting, for example, their financials. And they come back and they say, we've got to do something about this, and one aspect is clearly we need more and better leadership at the top, or at the top and right below the top. And those people really try hard to beat away at that. But they think that management is leadership. So what they work at is the planning stuff, the budgeting stuff, the organizing stuff. And at a certain point, you can literally become overmanaged and underled. And it's almost impossible, unless you've got a monopoly, to be overmanaged and underled and do well in the kind of world that we're living in today. I see it in performance appraisal forms. People are trying, the leadership word is coming up more. There it is in the performance appraisal. And I look at the items underneath it, half of them are management items. So because of the lack of clarity, as they try to cram that into the system, into succession planning, into recruiting, what they're in reality doing is promoting more people who are good at management, bringing in more talent that has management potential, not leadership potential. And they're not solving the real leadership problem that can help them deal with this increasingly turbulent, changing environment. You got to understand the differences, and the people around you need to understand them. And if you don't, you get yourself into trouble.
I actually kind of agree with what he said. To paraphrase, what Connor's saying there is that almost all the systems that we see around us these days are getting more and more codified. Means that they put them, like, everything is designed to be a system, and very little human kind of interaction and choice is really, there's not as many opportunities for people to lead because the system is just running. And so even though he's saying that it's true, you need leadership in the days when you have a changing environment, and he said, yes, there's an exception for monopolies, which is funny but true. Yeah, if you're Amazon, you can just run it like a machine. You don't have to have any. Jeff Bezos just quit. They don't need him anymore. If you need some, let's say, either customer service or you're an employee who needs to talk to the personnel or human resource department, you can't even reach them, right? They're like an automated company. It's like YouTube. If you have a problem with YouTube, who do you call? There's no one to call. So monopolies can get away with that, but other companies that have to be more flexible, they need actual leadership. And what they find, or what he's saying, is even in the system, when they're trying to find leaders, most of the things that they're identifying in their job interviews or their applications or their performance reviews is actually questions about management and processes, and there's no real criteria for trying to develop leadership at all. So one way that might be able to be solved by a company is to consider the traits involved in leadership. Now, our book and our syllabus have certain traits they want to focus on, so I'll look at that in the book for a couple minutes. I think most of them are adjectives and most of them are self-explanatory, but this particular website had a pretty good list too. Some of them are the same. Effective communicators. Effective communicators. Super important to be a skilled or effective communicator. And to go back to last lesson, that skilled communication requires cultural understanding. It requires, to know how to explain things, to know the feelings of the people, to be able to empathize or at least understand the energy of the people around you. It means being able to have a diverse way of communication, that you're able to communicate verbally and in writing. So there's a lot of elements to communication that are important. A poor communicator has a very difficult time becoming a leader. Accountable and responsible. In our syllabus, I think that the closest thing is responsible. And responsible can have two meanings. Responsible means people trust you. So when you say, and this is like integrity, it's one of my favorite words, integrity. When you say something you're going to do, it gets done. Or when you say what you mean, your actions match your words. Integrity. People will respect you and trust you if you have integrity in your words and your actions. And responsibility also means, not in every culture, but in Australian culture, for example, you take responsibility for your mistakes. If you make a mistake, you don't try to push it off to someone else or not answer the phone. That's accountability. Another one is a future thinker or a long-term thinker, some vision. So that also is not about time, it's also about the perspective of the globe, a global perspective. From the book, having a global perspective and thinking strategically is about using the best people from around the world. To make strategic decisions, you need to understand a global scale and also have visions and long-term goals. However, this may put you in a funny position with shareholders if you don't take them into account, because shareholders will also have short-term goals. So you have to convince them with your great communication skills that it's essential to have a long-term plan. Motivated. Leaders are self-motivated. Okay, motivated and self. And in our book, another nice one is self-discipline. Self-discipline. What does that mean? Self-discipline. Self-discipline. There's a difference between bosses, and this is from the book, page 177. There's a difference between bosses and workers. Leaders understand the nature of this difference and accept it, and how it has an impact on their image, actions, and communications. In this way, they conduct themselves in a way that sets them apart from their employees, not in a way that suggests they are better than them, but in a way that gives them a perspective on what's going on in the workplace. A strong vision and the discipline to see it through is one of the most important characteristics of leadership. A leader who believes in the vision and goals and keeps working towards them, whatever the setbacks is an inspiration to the team. So even when things go wrong a little bit, be disciplined, stick to the plan. Don't give up, is kind of what that's saying. Self-motivated, of course, motivation is both ways. Self-motivated means that, you have drive, an inner ambition and drive to succeed. And in our syllabus, motivational and inspirational. That's going to come from some kind of power, though, right? That's going to come from either the power that someone has to reward you or punish you. I mean, sure, you could just believe in Steve Jobs and just like the fact that you can tell everybody that you work for a famous CEO, and that motivates them enough that your charisma, your referent power as a famous person motivates people to want to know about your success. When I first moved to Vietnam, I asked students who they would want to meet, if they could meet a famous person. So many people chose Big 8, Big 8, Big 8. I said, Big 8? Who is Big 8? Oh, Bill Gates. Okay, Bill Gates, why do you want to meet him? He's rich. Oh my God. Bill Gates, theoretically, is a software designer, not a banker. You should talk to Bill Gates' accountant. Why isn't he more famous? Why he should be the one who's the most famous? Bill Gates doesn't count the money. He doesn't think of the price. He doesn't set all the marketing strategy. He doesn't figure out how to leverage Microsoft products to make billions of dollars. He just makes software, and he's a CEO, so that's good. But, this idea that you're motivated by someone who just, who's really making the money? Anyway, employees can be motivated by the vision of the leader, the charisma of the leader, the fame of the leader, the power of the leader, the fear from the leader. There's a lot of different ways to motivate. Confident, duh. Yeah, right? Who's going to be a leader who's not confident? Of course they have to have those moments when they're in the movie, when they're in the back room, and they're talking to their husband or their wife, and they say, oh, I just don't know. I don't know if I can make it. They, show a little bit of weakness. But never in public. In confidence, you have to be in public. In public, you have to have confidence if you want people to follow you. Questionable one, people-oriented. People-oriented. Are these, are you aware of what people are doing? They're able to foster a team culture, involve others, show concern. By being people-oriented, leaders are able to energize and motivate. Another form of motivation is, I guess, the feeling that you are like a big brother and you care about them, or a big sister. Emotionally stable. Yeah, like Elon Musk. He thinks that AI is going to destroy us all. So, I think that makes sense too. So I'm going to finish this list here and then look at the bad leadership characteristics and then move on to political. So, skilled communicator, yes. Socially aware. That could mean in a wider sense, understanding the cultural differences. And so culturally aware, I would add culturally aware as well as differences aware, like difference between your culture and their culture. Emotionally intelligent is in the book, but it's not in the So listen. Skilled decision maker. In other words, someone who has experience and understands that possible. I mean, if you want to show that in your work or you want to show that in your exams, skilled decision maker means that you can see all sides of the possible outcomes of a situation. So you can show that's why they always ask questions about considerations. Considerations means concerns or worries, and then also about strategy. So skilled decision makers also understand the considerations and potential problems of certain decisions. Future thinker, self-disciplined, responsible, motivational. All of those things are there, and they're in the book, page 176. Now we all know there's a great movie called, it's an average movie. It could have been great, called Bad Bosses. And it's just like about really bad bosses and all the, manipulation and horrible things that they do to the main characters on their staff. A bad leader, what do bad leaders do? It's kind of a fun question, isn't it? Too bossy. The bad boss is too bossy. It's kind of funny. Boss baby. Instead of, just saying like, could you please, just simple, nice things. Like, get that thing. That's how we teach children. Why we teach children to say please, So I guess that's what it means. Someone who never asks nicely. Bad leader is someone who's fearful of change, that they already are like committed to no risk in their own situation. I've seen this many, many times, especially in, and it's not exactly the shock of the world, I mean, you have people who are in management positions who have children. They also have fear, even though they're middle managers, they're still afraid of losing their job. But if you go to the highest level, they shouldn't have that fear, right? The CEOs shouldn't be fearful of change. Plus, everyone can feel that. Everyone can feel that. Bad communicators, so many bad communicators. One of the elements of bad communication is just being aloof. Aloof means like we don't really know how others perceive your actions. You don't really know how, you cannot feel what is exactly the right way to communicate, and so it always feels awkward. So that's a communication problem, and sometimes it comes off negatively. Sometimes people, they really don't want to be negative, but what they say and how they say it, it just is like, really? Why are you, people feel attacked. So it's really a problem if you cannot communicate effectively. But it's also, this number 5 here, it says lack of empathy. A lack of empathy means you don't really care. So that's different. This is like, maybe I care, but I just don't know how to communicate smoothly in a way that people can feel that I care. I miss it. I miss how to do it. Lacking empathy means I just don't really care what you think about the situation. Now, most leaders that I know, they switch on and off, right? Sometimes they can't always, I don't want them to pretend that they care if they don't really care in that moment. Care when you care, be real. Which is a new trend called authentic leadership. Dismissive of ideas other than their own. That happens. You have an idea that can improve their idea, and they're like, no, we already decided. sometimes, I mean, I like to try to give ideas to my management or my leaders, and I say about 50% of the time I have a good idea, and after being explained to me, if they're a good communicator, then I see that my idea doesn't work. It's fair. I like this back and forth. It's getting to the solution. It's getting to a better point. But yeah, a poor leader doesn't even listen to ideas. Lacking empathy, again, like I said, they don't care what other people really feel about what they do. Inconsistent, big problem. Big problem. Inconsistent is hard, especially if you're a leader who relies on other parts of your organization to support your integrity, your words. If you can promise something and then your organization cannot deliver, then you lose all of the goodwill that you would have. So to be consistent, you have to kind of be aware of like the limitations of what you can and cannot do, and don't promise things that you can't do. Inconsistent also means that one day you're like, yeah, no, this is okay, you can do that. You can use the photocopy machine. The next day you come in, why are you using the photocopy machine? So if you don't remember what you told people the last time that you agreed to something, and then you come in and you change it, of course they're gonna feel bad. Blaming others. Woo! That's a big one. As a leader, it doesn't really help ever to blame other people. You can ask them about their motivation. You can ask them how you can support them. And then if it doesn't work, you can actually start to dismiss employees that don't work out. But blaming them doesn't work. Indecisive, in the middle, cannot decide, obviously, is a problem. Okay, that's it. We're done with that. I want to go back now to support you a little bit on your project. Again, I don't feel like there's a lot that needs to be done for economics. I think you know economic factors. The economic factors, though, should apply to your industry, not just general inflation. Not just general unemployment. We're talking about the factors that are in the coffee business. Demand for coffee. Customer buying behavior. How much they're willing to spend on coffee. What trends are there in the market in terms of prices and competitors and takeaway and discounts and then you get into delivery services, and that affects prices and all those things. So all of that is far more economic interest for me as a CEO who wants you as my marketing research and business researcher to tell me about. I can read the newspaper and find out about the inflation rate of Spain. Who cares? It's not really solving the problem. It's not even giving me a real strong sense of how it's going to affect our business in that country. So I really, really emphasize, don't just give general economic factors. Political factors, though, are slightly more complex. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on these next pages. Chapter 18. Chapter 18, page 115. And political factors. So notice economic factors here. Discretionary spending is not just how much money people have to spend. It's how much money they spend on coffee. It's how coffee consumption might be affected by the difference in their, in economic activity. So The main one is the price elasticity of demand. So if things get more expensive, how fast do people cut back on coffee? Now, if you told me that I can only pick 5 things that I can buy, I had to limit my purchases, coffee would be on my list probably. So there's no elasticity of demand. The price would have to go to $200 a cup for me to stop drinking coffee. So Italians are never going to stop drinking coffee. Most coffee drinking countries don't really have a price point that would change their drinking, except maybe change the way they drink the coffee. I know a lot of Germans, for example, they like to drink their coffee at home more than they do in the cafe. Currency fluctuations is a possible thing to talk about. Interest rates, I don't want to hear about it. Interest rates is not really interesting at all. You're not borrowing money in that country. So there's no point in considering it. Economic activity, yeah, so is it going up or going down? Somebody asked me about COVID. I said, well, we should probably think about the country before COVID. Using COVID is unfair. If you use COVID, it's like every country is having an economic downturn. So that's not really helpful in terms of analysis. So then your final recommendation would be don't expand anywhere. So I don't think that's a great outcome for us. So we should think about pre-COVID time. All right, political factors. I had a good handout for this, but I don't now. We know about export risk. We already know that. So we're not really worried about that too much. And we know how to solve that problem with the insurance. So we're okay with that. They're going to trick me with Google again, but they're not.